You won't believe what happened the moment I lifted my garage door. It was one of those crisp mornings where you can see your breath in the air, the kind of day that usually starts slow and quiet. I had my coffee in one hand, still steaming, and the garage remote in the other. The metallic creak of the hinges echoed down the street, and for about half a second, I was thinking about nothing more than whether I'd remembered to put gas in the car yesterday. Then it happened, the kind of noise that sends a jolt of adrenaline through your chest before your brain even registers what's going on. From across the street came a high-pitched, ear-splitting scream. Not just any scream, the kind you hear in a horror movie right before the villain shows up. Thief! He's stealing my car. I actually froze, halfway between stepping onto the driveway and reaching for the driver's side door. My mind instantly went into overdrive. Who was stealing a car? Where? And more importantly, why was she looking at me when she yelled it? That's when I saw her, Karen. Not just any neighbor, but the HOA Karen. The one who had a reputation for treating every minor inconvenience as if it were a national emergency. She stood there in her driveway, in a fluffy pink bathrobe and mismatched slippers, her hair sticking out like she'd just rolled out of bed, but her phone was already glued to her ear. She was pacing like a detective in the middle of a sting operation, eyes locked on me as if I had just driven through her living room. You! Step away from that vehicle, she shouted, pointing at me so aggressively you'd think she was about to perform a citizen's arrest. I'm on with the police right now. You're not getting away with this. At first, I thought she was joking, some kind of bizarre, early morning prank. But no. The tone in her voice, the way her hand was shaking as she clutched her phone, the fact that she was clearly talking to someone official. All of it screamed that she was dead serious. My stomach dropped as I realized she was calling 911 on me. Karen, what are you talking about? I tried to keep my voice calm, but there was a definite edge to it. This is my car. You've seen me drive it for weeks. She stomped forward, still talking into her phone. Yes, officer, I can see him. He's driving it out right now. I just bought this vehicle, and he stole it before it was delivered to me. Her voice was so loud I could hear every word on my side of the street. I just stood there, baffled. My car was a brand new silver SUV I'd purchased last month from Westlake Motors. It had my license plates, my insurance, my name all over the paperwork. The only thing connecting it to Karen was that she apparently thought it looked nice. And now she was accusing me of intercepting her delivery? I took a sip of coffee just to buy myself a second before responding, but she didn't give me the chance. She came storming up my driveway like she owned the place, finger jabbing at the air. Don't you dare play dumb with me. I just ordered this exact make, model, and color from the dealership. They told me it was on the way, and now here it is, in your garage. Explain that. Explain. I almost laughed. Karen, you seriously think I hijacked your car order? Do you know how insane that sounds? Her eyes narrowed, lips pressed so tight they nearly disappeared. It's not insane. It's suspicious. I'm the head of the HOA's neighborhood watch. I know when something's off. And this is off. Very off. I took a deep breath, trying to avoid the very real temptation to tell her exactly what I thought of her neighborhood watch skills. Karen, you've seen this SUV here every day for the past month. You've waved at me while I was washing it. You've even commented on how shiny it looked. She crossed her arms. That was before I realized it was mine. I was about to tell her that logic like that could only come from someone who'd had one too many HOA meetings when the situation went from ridiculous to unbelievable. 2 police cruisers came speeding around the corner, lights flashing. For a split second, I thought, she didn't actually get them to come here that fast, did she? But she had. The cars rolled up and stopped in front of my driveway. Doors opened. Officers stepped out with that serious, scanning the scene look they get when they think there's a crime in progress. My pulse jumped a little. Even though I knew I'd done nothing wrong, there's something about seeing police officers arrive like that that makes your brain go straight into fight or flight mode. Karen wasted no time. She ran toward them like they were long-lost friends. "Officers! Over here! That's him! He's the one stealing my vehicle!" She pointed at me again, practically bouncing on her heels. I caught him red-handed, just in time. The taller officer, probably in his mid-40s with a calm but authoritative voice, raised his hand toward her. "Ma'am, slow down. We'll get to the bottom of this." He then walked toward me while his partner stayed near Karen, clearly keeping one eye on her just in case she decided to escalate. "Sir, do you own this vehicle?" he asked, his voice even but direct. "Yes," I said without hesitation, already pulling my wallet from my pocket. "Bought it last month from Westlake Motors. Paid in full. I've got the registration and insurance papers right here." The officer glanced over at Karen, who was now muttering to herself about justice and neighborhood standards, and I knew this was about to turn into one of the weirdest mornings of my life. Before handing him the documents, I took another sip of coffee, because somehow, I had the feeling I was going to need every drop of caffeine I could get to deal with the next half hour. And that's how a perfectly normal morning turned into the start of one of the most absurd HOA Karen confrontations I've ever had, all because I dared to open my own garage. The taller officer took the paperwork from my hand and looked it over carefully, flipping between my registration and my driver's license like he was checking for even the smallest inconsistency. His face didn't give away much, but I could tell he'd already spotted that everything matched. Meanwhile, the second officer stood next to Karen, who was talking so fast it was hard to believe she was breathing between sentences. I told you this man was suspicious the day he moved in. I knew something like this would happen. He probably has a whole garage full of stolen property in there. And now, look, bold as brass, trying to drive away in my SUV before the dealership could even call me for pickup. I caught him just in time. "You're welcome." She actually said, "You're welcome," to a police officer. The taller officer glanced at her, then back at me. "Sir, can you open the vehicle so we can verify the VIN number?" "Of course," I said, walking over to the driver's side. I unlocked it with my key fob, making sure the beep was loud enough for Karen to hear, because apparently, in her mind, I'd somehow also stolen the keyless entry remote that came with her order. I pulled the door open and gestured for the officer to check the metal plate by the windshield. He bent down, read it carefully, and then stepped back to radio it in. Karen crossed her arms, her mouth twisted into that smug expression she wore whenever she thought she was about to be proven right. "When you hear back, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. The dealership made a mistake, delivered it to him, and he decided to keep it. That's grand theft auto. That's a serious crime, officer." The other cop, who was clearly less patient than his partner, tilted his head toward her. "Ma'am, even if a delivery mix-up happened, that wouldn't automatically make this grand theft auto. That would be a civil matter between the dealership and the person who received it." Karen scoffed so hard I'm surprised she didn't pull a muscle. "Civil matter? Are you kidding me? He's a criminal. I know he is. The HOA president told me just last week that his lawn was 2 inches higher than regulations. That's a sign of a man who doesn't respect rules." I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing at the logic. My lawn height was now Exhibit B in her criminal case against me. The taller officer's radio crackled, and a voice came through, "Vehicle is registered to my name, purchased last month from Westlake Motors. No stolen vehicle report filed." I knew what that meant, but Karen wasn't ready to hear it. She stepped forward like she was about to argue her case before the Supreme Court. "That's not possible. That's just a fake record he had someone put in the system. Do you know how easy it is to manipulate databases these days? I watch crime documentaries all the time. I know how these things work." The taller officer gave her a look that could politely be translated to, "Please stop talking before I lose my patience." "Ma'am, official DMV records are not something that can be manipulated by a random person. The registration is legitimate, and the car is his." She jabbed her finger in my direction again. "No. You're missing the bigger picture. I ordered this exact make, model, and color from my dealership. They told me it was being prepared for delivery. Now suddenly, he's driving one. What are the odds? Clearly, they delivered it here by mistake, and he's just pretending he bought it." The second officer sighed. "Ma'am, did you receive a VIN number for your order?" Karen paused for the first time since this whole circus started. "Well, not exactly. They said they'd send me one when it shipped." "So," the officer pressed, "it hasn't shipped yet?" She shifted her weight from foot to foot. "Not, technically. But that doesn't mean anything. They could have just skipped telling me." The taller officer looked at me. "Do you mind if we call the dealership to clear this up once and for all?" "Not at all," I said, pulling my phone out. "Want me to put them on speaker?" Karen was already dialing before I could. She stepped aside, pressing her phone to her ear. I could hear her tone change instantly into that overly sweet voice she used when she wanted something. "Hi, this is Mrs. Thompson. I'm calling to check on the delivery of my new SUV. I think it may have been delivered to the wrong address." She turned her head toward me like she was expecting the dealership to gasp in shock and confirm her suspicions right there. There was a pause on her end. Then her face started to change, that tight, smug expression slowly loosening into something that looked almost like embarrassment. "Oh, it's still in the lot? Waiting for shipment? 6 weeks?" She laughed nervously. "Well, maybe you should double-check." "Oh. Right. Okay. Thanks." She hung up and shoved the phone in her robe pocket like it had betrayed her. The taller officer raised an eyebrow. "So?" Karen cleared her throat. "They claim it's still in the lot. But you can't trust dealerships either. They lie all the time. I've read about it on the internet." The second officer's patience was wearing thin. "Ma'am, what we have here is a verified registration, a confirmed purchase, and no evidence of theft. This is a false alarm." Her lips pressed together so hard I thought she might actually swallow her own argument. But even then, she didn't back down completely. "Fine. But when I get my SUV in 6 weeks, and it looks exactly like his, I'm going to file a full HOA investigation. You'll see." I don't know what was more absurd, that she thought 2 identical SUVs couldn't possibly exist in the same neighborhood, or that she truly believed the HOA had the authority to investigate vehicle mix-ups like some kind of small-town FBI. The taller officer handed my paperwork back to me. "Sir, you're good to go. Sorry for the inconvenience." "No problem," I said, though I couldn't resist adding, "I guess I should be grateful she didn't accuse me of stealing her bathrobe, too." Karen gasped like I'd just insulted her entire family tree. "That's not funny," she snapped. But the officers were already walking back to their cruisers, probably thanking the universe that they didn't have to write up this particular circus act. And just like that, what should have been a peaceful morning coffee run had turned into a scene straight out of a sitcom, except instead of laugh tracks, there were police radios and a neighbor who was somehow still convinced I'd pulled off the world's most ridiculous car heist. The taller officer lingered for a moment, clearly wanting to wrap this whole mess up, but he must have sensed Karen wasn't going to drop it quietly. He turned to me and asked in a lower, more deliberate tone, "Sir, do you have any kind of proof of ownership beyond the registration? Something that could shut this down completely?" I could feel the corner of my mouth twitch upward. "Oh, I've got something better than that," I said, reaching into my pocket for my phone. I unlocked it, tapped my security camera app, and pulled up the morning's footage. The moment the screen lit up, Karen's voice cut through the air. What's that? Some fake video you downloaded off the internet? I ignored her and rewound to about 10 minutes earlier. The footage was crystal clear, me, walking out of my front door in pajama pants and a hoodie, coffee mug in hand. I strolled into my garage, hit the button to raise the door, and walked straight to my SUV. There was no delivery truck, no stranger handing over keys, no mysterious drop-off in the night. Just me and my own car, exactly where it had been parked since I bought it. The taller officer leaned in, watching carefully. "What time is this?" 7:48 a.m., I replied. Same as when she claimed she caught me stealing it. Karen rolled her eyes so hard I thought she might pull a muscle. Anyone can make a video like that. You can add cars in digitally these days. I saw it on YouTube. Deep fakes, they call them. You think I don't know about technology? The second officer raised his eyebrows at her. Ma'am, you're saying this man faked weeks of security footage just to make it look like he owns a car, that's already legally registered to him? Yes, she snapped without hesitation. That's exactly the kind of thing thieves do when they want to cover their tracks. They're sneaky. I suppressed the urge to laugh and instead scrolled further back in the footage, bringing up clips from the last 30 days. Every single one showed the same SUV parked in the garage or in the driveway. There was footage of me washing it, loading groceries, even one where my dog was sniffing around the tires while I was vacuuming the interior. All of it timestamped, all of it proof that I'd owned the vehicle long before Karen had even placed her so-called order. The taller officer gave a slight nod. Yeah, that's pretty conclusive. Karen, however, wasn't done twisting herself into knots. Well, maybe you stole it before last month. Ever think of that? Maybe you've had it hidden until now. The second officer sighed, clearly tired of chasing her imaginary theories. Ma'am, if that were true, there would be a stolen vehicle report in the system. There isn't. And the dealership confirmed your order hasn't even been shipped yet. That means this car couldn't possibly be yours. Karen crossed her arms, glaring at me like I'd personally orchestrated the downfall of her entire morning. I'm not convinced. I'm going to call the dealership again, because clearly, they don't understand the seriousness of this situation. She pulled out her phone, dialing with rapid-fire taps. We all stood there in awkward silence until she got someone on the line. Her voice instantly switched to that saccharine tone she used when she thought she could charm her way into getting what she wanted. Hi, this is Mrs. Thompson again. Yes, I need you to verify something about my SUV order. I'm standing in front of a vehicle that looks exactly like the one I bought, and I think it was delivered to the wrong person. I could hear the dealership rep faintly on the other end, their tone polite but firm. After a few seconds, Karen's fake smile started to falter. Still on the lot? 6 weeks until shipping? Are you sure? No VIN assigned yet? Oh. I see. Her eyes darted toward me for just a second before she quickly looked down at the ground. Yes, well, thank you for clarifying. She hung up without another word. The taller officer tilted his head. And? Karen's lips pressed together in a tight, thin line. They claim it hasn't been shipped yet. But I don't trust them either. Dealerships lie. They could be covering for him. The second officer muttered under his breath, covering for him? Lady, this isn't a spy movie. Karen snapped, don't call me lady. I'm Mrs. Thompson. At this point, I decided to put the nail in the coffin. Officers, would you like to see the purchase receipt and financing documents from the day I bought it? I pulled them up in my email and handed my phone over. The paperwork was all there, sale date, dealership name, full payment confirmation, and matching VIN number. The taller officer scrolled through it and then handed the phone back with a small smirk. That's it. We're done here. He turned to Karen. Ma'am, there's no crime. This man owns this vehicle. Your report is unfounded. But instead of apologizing or even walking away quietly, Karen doubled down one last time. If you won't arrest him, then at least issue a citation for, I don't know, suspicious behavior. The HOA will want this documented. The taller officer's patience finally cracked. Ma'am, filing a false police report is a criminal offense. We're letting you off with a warning today, but if you do this again, we will take further action. Do you understand? For the first time since the whole thing began, Karen didn't have a snappy comeback. She just huffed, muttered something about keeping an eye on the neighborhood, and stomped back to her driveway. I stood there for a second, still holding my coffee, now lukewarm, watching her retreat like a defeated general after a lost battle. The second officer gave me a half-smile. Guessing this isn't the first time she's caused trouble? Not even close, I replied. But it's definitely the most creative. They chuckled, wished me a good day, and headed back to their cruisers. As they pulled away, I glanced across the street to see Karen peeking from behind her curtains, still glaring at me like I'd gotten away with some elaborate heist. It was almost funny, except I knew Karen well enough to realize this wasn't the end of it, not by a long shot. I figured that once the officers drove away, the whole ridiculous scene would be over. But with Karen, nothing is ever truly over. I went back inside, finally set my coffee down, and tried to get on with my day. About an hour later, while I was sitting at my desk answering emails, I got a new message notification. I glanced at my phone. It was from the HOA board. The subject line alone made me laugh out loud: urgent community concern, possible stolen property. Curiosity got the better of me, so I opened it. Sure enough, there it was, a formal complaint filed by none other than Mrs. Thompson herself. The message claimed that I was in possession of an automobile matching the exact specifications of one she ordered, that my behavior when confronted was evasive and suspicious, and that I had failed to provide proof of ownership satisfactory to a concerned neighbor. It ended with an outrageous demand that I issue a formal apology to her and the HOA for causing undue emotional distress and violating the trust and safety of the neighborhood. I nearly spit out my coffee. The part about emotional distress really got me. This was the same woman who had marched onto my driveway, accused me of grand theft auto in front of 2 police officers, and screamed for my arrest, and now she was the victim? Instead of firing off an angry reply, I decided to take my time and put together something airtight. I gathered every shred of evidence I had: the registration paperwork, the purchase receipt, the email confirmation from the dealership, and the security footage from the past month. I put it all into one neat file and attached it to my reply, along with a brief message to the HOA board. Regarding the complaint filed by Mrs. Thompson, please find attached all proof of ownership for my vehicle, as well as confirmation from the dealership that Mrs. Thompson's order is still awaiting shipment. I trust this resolves any concerns. I hit send and went about my day, confident the matter would disappear. The next morning, I got a reply from the board. Short and to the point: thank you for your prompt response and thorough documentation. This matter is closed. That was it. No lecture, no follow-up questions, no "we'll keep this on file." Just closed. Later that afternoon, I ran into one of the board members while walking my dog. She leaned in with a conspiratorial smile and whispered, "Between you and me, that's not the first time she's pulled something like this. But calling the cops over a neighbor's car? That's a new one." Then she dropped the bombshell: they're voting to remove her from the Neighborhood Watch program next week. Apparently, some of the other board members think she's making the HOA look bad. I tried not to grin too hard, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't enjoying this more than I should. Sure enough, about a week later, a new HOA newsletter went out, and buried halfway down the email, in small print, was a single sentence: Mrs. Thompson has stepped down as head of the Neighborhood Watch due to personal reasons. I almost printed it out and framed it. For a few days, things were blissfully quiet. I opened my garage without anyone accusing me of theft. I drove my SUV to the store without worrying about flashing lights pulling up behind me. I even started to think Karen had finally learned her lesson. Then came the coincidental run-ins. The first time, I was getting into my car to head to work when I spotted her standing at the end of her driveway, arms folded, staring at me. She didn't say a word, just followed my every move with her eyes like she was a hawk and I was a mouse about to make a run for it. The second time, I was coming home with groceries, and she just happened to be outside watering her lawn. As soon as I got out of the car, she called out, "Enjoy it while you can." I pretended not to hear her and went inside. The third time, I caught her taking pictures of my SUV with her phone. I stepped outside and asked if she needed something. She froze, mumbled something about documenting property conditions for the HOA archives, and scurried back inside her house. I didn't bother reporting any of it. At that point, I'd already proven she had no case. Besides, the more she kept acting like this, the more the neighbors noticed. And they were noticing. One Saturday, while I was washing my car in the driveway, my next-door neighbor, Jim, came over. He leaned on the fence and said, "You know, half the street thinks she's lost it." My wife saw the whole thing with the cops that day, said it was like watching a live episode of some reality TV show. He chuckled. "If she tries that again, you should start charging admission." I laughed, but the truth was, I didn't mind the idea of her making herself look bad without me lifting a finger. Every glare, every petty little stunt she pulled after that just made her look more unhinged. The best moment came 2 weeks later. I was driving past her house on my way to the hardware store when I spotted her sitting on her porch. I slowed down just enough to give her a friendly wave. She stiffened like she'd been caught doing something wrong and gave me the iciest glare I've ever seen. And you know what? I couldn't help myself. I rolled down the window and called out, "6 weeks is almost up, Karen. Excited for your actual SUV to arrive?" Her jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. She just turned her head and stared straight ahead like I wasn't even there. I drove off grinning, because in that moment, I knew I'd won. Not just because I'd kept my car, or because I'd proven her wrong in front of the police, the HOA, and the entire neighborhood. But because I'd done it without stooping to her level. And now, every morning when I open my garage, I half expect her to come running across the street with some new accusation. But I also know that the next time she tries something like this, I'll be ready, camera rolling, paperwork in hand, and maybe even a fresh cup of coffee to sip while she ties herself in knots. Because with neighbors like Karen, it's never a matter of if, it's a matter of when.